Hi students, I'm gonna share my screen right now, and in doing that I will begin discussion of a topic in chapter or module 10 in our Introduction to Networking course, and that is a topic of basic device configuration. There is a packet tracer in this module 10.4.3, and many of you have successfully completed it, but many have not. And I've been getting a few questions and wanted to get some people on the right track so that they can be successful with this packet tracer. So it is a little bit tricky, and most students are not going to say the same thing as their fellow students. So there are many different topologies that can be given to you upon launching of the packet tracer. So that said, I want to give some general advice, and probably will not be able to solve your particular problem because there's going to be variations in the topology. Now you can see over on the right hand side, I have the PT activity window, and there is this completely empty addressing table, some information on the scenario, and then the requirements that you're going to need to fulfill to be able to get 100% connectivity and 100% grade on the activity. But because one of the first things you're going to need to do is work out this addressing table, I think it is a more prudent plan of action to open up the Microsoft Word file rather than try to work through the PT activity window, because you're going to need to be filling some things out. You're going to need to be working out this addressing table. So let's take a look at how we're going to discern what information we need to put into this table. So in my particular topology that you see in the packet tracer canvas, I have a router named RTA, two switches, ASW1 and ASW2. So I've typed those things into my Microsoft Word file so that I can begin this addressing table. And I have 4 PCs, user-01 through user-04. And again, I've put those into my addressing table. So that's what you're going to need to do in your Microsoft Word file, your worksheet, so that you can work out the details of your topology. I'm going to make an assumption that G00 interface of the router is over here on the left and G01 is on the right, just because that is what makes sense. And I will also use the information that's in these light gray boxes, that is the IPv4 and IPv6 network addresses for the two LANs. The one on the left, in my case, is 10.10.10.0 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0 indicated by the /24. And then the LAN on the right is the 10.10.11.0 network. So let's, work through how we're going to dig deeper and answer some questions about filling in this table on the right. Well, let's see if there is anything provided for us. And there is. We can look at the user-01 PC and see that an IP version for address has been configured for that PC. It's 10.10.10.101. So I can use that information. Okay. So that's one certain piece of information that I can use, the IP version for address for the user 01 PC. So let's come over to user 01 and we can fill that information in. You'll find out if you open up user 02, 3, and 4 that you're going to find some similar information for those devices, and you will be able to get that information by looking at the panels like here in user 04. Go to the desktop, IP configuration, and you'll be able to see the IP version for address. We will be needing to configure the default gateway, but we'll chill on that for a moment here until we get some more information. Okay. It is typical when we configure router interfaces to use the first usable address in the network. So G00 interface, which I will assume is on the LAN over here in the 10.10.10.0 network, I am going to give the first usable address in that network, or 10.10.10.1. And voila, that is going to be the default gateway for user 01 and user 02, right? Because if you were at the NIC of either of those PCs and you were basically reaching out to go to beyond the local network, you would be looking for the very first router interface that you encounter, and that would be the 10.10.10.1. So for user 01 and user 02, we can put in the default gateway of 10.10.10.1. Okay. Just make sure we put them in the right places in the table. And we have, okay, the G01 interface, which we'll assume goes over here, we'll use the first usable address, the first device address in the 10.10.11 network, which would be 10.10.11.1. And similarly, that will become also the default gateway for users user-03 and user-04 PC. So let's put that information into the table. Now, the second row in this IP address, sub row in the table here is what we're going to use for the IP version 6 information. So an IPv6 address, although it looks, scarier in some ways, really is pretty straightforward. And we're going to use the same general thought process when assigning the router interface address, and that is to use the first usable IPv6 address in this network, which means we're just going to add a 1 after this long address. So 2001 :db8 :acad :100 and then ::, gotta make sure the colors are right, and a 1/64. So that will be the IP version 6 interface address for G00 on the RTA router. And this third area we're going to use to hold the information for the link local address. So in your reading in this chapter and perhaps the previous chapter, there should have been mention of link local as it relates to IP version 6. And it is very common in the IPv6 world to use the link local address of the router interface as the version 6 default gateway. And you can read more about this in the chapter, and that will be the same idea for the G01 interface, both for the first usable address in the IPv6 network to give the ID for the interface, and then the link local address is FE80 ::1, which will then also be used as our IPv6 information for default gateways in the third column of our table. Okay, I don't know why that's red, so we'll turn it back to black. All right, so we've made some progress here in filling out much of the information in the table. We have a bit more that we will continue to work our way through as we move through the process. Okay, so let us move down into the actual requirements. And you can see that I filled in some information on my worksheet just so that it would be associated with the topology I received in my packet tracer. So there were blanks in the worksheet. I filled them in so that they would be synchronized with my packet tracer assignment. Okay. We want to provide, yes, the missing information in the addressing table. We want to name our router with the proper name. So let's click the router, go into the command line interface. We are now in user exec mode, and we can use the enable keyword to go into privileged exec mode. And one of the first things we would like to do is config, right? So we're going to config terminal so that we get into configuration mode. And then we want to do some configurations. Let's start with naming our device. So we'll use the host name and RTA, which you can see that now the command prompt has changed. So that gives me a little bit of feedback that the configuration took hold. Okay. We want to set a banner message. Usually it is just some warning like no unauthorized access permitted. There's not any mandate about the exact wording on this particular assignment. And basically that message of the day or banner is delimited by some character. I used the little caret symbols in this case, but there's no one character that is right or wrong. It is just a character that you're not going to use as part of your message. So that is why I picked sort of an odd character to use for my message of the day. We would like to set a password for our line, and we're told that we should use the password Cisco. We use the login keyword to require it on login, and then I will exit. We want our enable secret password to be class. Okay. And we were also told that all plain text passwords should be encrypted. So that would be the service password encryption keyword. So you noticed, maybe you did, I typed the word service space PASSW. I hit the tab key on my keyboard and the valid full command appeared on my screen. So that is a big help right there. We'll maybe just step back and take a little, break at this point, and we can, at the global configuration mode, we can show our running config to the screen and just take a look down through and see that our host name has information, our service password encryption is in our running config. We can see that our enable password is encrypted. We can look down through and see that there are some configurations that were preloaded into the system, things that we didn't configure, but they're there. We can see that the interface for G00 and G01 do not yet have any IP address configured on them. So we know we still need to do that work. And that our line console has a password. Okay. All right. So now might be a good time to go back into configuration mode and decide that we want to do some things with the interface. How about G00? So we want to put an IP address on G00. We can remind ourselves about what it is we decided to do with G00. We wanted to put 10.10.10.1. And a /24 is represented in the dotted decimal form with 255.255.255.0. And you need to bring the interface up with the no shutdown command. And you can see that you got some feedback back that the line protocol state has changed from down to up. We can go to the, well, while we're on G00, we can continue with our configuration with the Ipv6 interface. So that would be Ipv6 address. And then we have this much longer address, so we need to be careful and do not mistype anything. And you do not have to put it in all caps. And in the case of Ipv6, it's really a little bit easier and smoother than Ipv4 because you just represent the network portion with the slash notation rather than having to do some long subnet mask. So we have the Ipv6 address information as well, and Ipv6 address of the FE80 for the link local. And it does help to spell it correctly. There we go. All right. Recall that the Cisco iOS, both for the router and the switch, is a hierarchical operating system. So you need to be in the right hierarchy or tier when you enter commands. So you can see that your prompt inside of the operating system gives you a hint as to where you are. So if you ever get nasty messages about a command not being recognized, it could be because you are in that wrong level of the hierarchy. So either drill down further if you need to be in a lower level, or use the exit command, like I'm going to use right now, to pop up one level through the hierarchy. So if we wanted to go back and look at our running config again, if I tried to do it from this level, I got an error message, as you can see, because I have to be up one more level, and then I can use show run and see the configurations in my NB, in my volatile RAM. If I want to put these configurations into the non-volatile RAM, that means I have to put them into the startup config. So I need to copy the running config to the startup config, and that will not be a bad thing to do. We'll do that in just a second. So let's look through, see what we have. We have the host name. We have now information about IP addressing on the G00 and G01. Well, actually, we've only done the G00 interface. As you can see, the G01 is yet to be configured. I will let that up to you. You just follow the same model that we used on G00 to do G01. Now, what we will probably need to be doing as well in the config terminal mode is to make sure that we have IP version 6 unicast routing enabled. And that configuration will be in our running configuration, which we will now copy running config to startup config. As you can see, I'm trying to do that too low of a level, need to go up one. And this time I'm going to use shortcuts, copy, run to start. I'm asked to confirm that I want that destination file name to be startup-config. I do, I can just hit enter. And now that configuration has been copied. So we can see by looking at our activity that we've now completed 23% of the activity. We do still have a ways to go, but we are making progress. Let's go back into user one's PC, and we can see that we can add some information about the default gateway, because now we know that it is 10.10.10.1, and we also could probably enter some information about the IPv6 address. We could choose one. Remember, we used 1 for the router, right? The first usable address in the IPv6 network we assigned to the router interface. So let's go ahead and choose the second usable address. So I'll change this 1 to a 2, and it will also be in the 64 network. The default gateway will be the FE80, because we said we could use the unicast link local address. And that should be sufficient to finish the configurations that are necessary for this particular activity, because we're not using a DNS server for this activity. The user 2 PC, we can do some similar things. We can use the third address, right? Still in the 64. The default gateway will be the link local address. The default gateway will be on that same 10 network. We gave it the first usable address in the network. And that gets us further on our way. Whoops, that was not the right thing. And our completion rate has creeped up to 29%. So we're getting more and more through the activity at each configuration that we complete. So let's go with the user 03 PC. The IPv4 address was already there. The default gateway is going to be the router interface address. And we will need to discover what it is we decided to use for the G01 interface in the IPv6 world, so that we can assign a second address in that network for the PC. And we'll continue with the link local address for the default gateway. And then finally, the default gateway in the IPv4 world. And since we used 1 for the router and 2 for user 03, we'll use 3 for and we will and our completion rate has now edged up to 35%. So we are making progress. Yes. So hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea of what you need to do. You will also need to open up the switch. And I believe you are given instructions that you need to probably put exec and privileged exec passwords for access to the ASW2 switch. I think the ASW1 switch is locked. It is. So you will also want to configure appropriate banner for the switch and document and assign the VLAN 1 interface on the switch. Save the configurations, that's copy run to start. And then you're going to use pings to first ping from user 01 to the router interface. Make sure that you can talk to that distance, and we can give that a try. We can ping 10, 10, 10, 1. So we do have connectivity between the user 01 PC and the closest facing router interface. And then as your configurations evolve, you will be able to ping not just that interface, but beyond the local network into the remote network. So that will take configuring the G01 interface on the router. You see we still have red triangles here, meaning that that connectivity is not yet completed in its configuration. So there's just a little bit more to do to complete, but I think you're getting the idea of it. I think I've put you on a framework for completing the table and putting you on the right path. And I think that you should be able to now complete the 10.4.3 packet tracer. Now, I'm also aware that there may be a misconfiguration somewhere along the way, which will mess you up. There's a note that says this activity is configured with an error that the student must correct before the packet tracer tool will assign full credit. So it may very well be on PC 4, and it is indeed, in this case, it is in the wrong subnet, as you can see. The network here is the 10.10.11 network, and yet the IPv4 address is in the 10.10.10 network. So we are going to fix that right now. And your configuration, again, may be using some different IP addresses, may be using some different names for the intermediary devices and the end devices. So the configurations need to match your topology, but the general flow will be the same. Good luck.